Hi everyone. Like I mentioned, I wanted to take a couple minutes to go over macros to talk a little bit about why you might use them and then just to run through one or two here quickly. So number one, macros are they're steps that you can record in Microsoft Word on something that you maybe do on a regular basis. So I did, and I'll actually upload this link to Blackboard, but here's four examples about how you might use macros. And I don't want to scroll through this too quickly, but notice there's add a macro button to your quick access toolbar. You can see this is kind of old, but it still has the proper information in it. And then it goes on to talk about how you might use it for company letterhead. You could use it to, sorry, I hope this isn't making you sick, insert pre-designed tables. And then I think the last one here was setting up like a page setup, a specific page setup that you use a lot. Like maybe you have a custom document that you use all the time, and you can use a macro to set up that information as well. So I'll include this link so you can kind of look through it a little closer. But let's go into Word right now, and I'll just go over a couple things. So the book doesn't cover this extremely well, so I just wanted to mention that you have to be careful when recording a macro. You'll see that the book mentions it very briefly on page 136 as it's talking about recording a macro, but it can do some recording of mouse clicks and different things that you do, and other things it doesn't do well. Like for instance, I was kind of playing around with this. I selected this text, I changed the font color here. The macro didn't pick up on that. The other thing it doesn't do is mouse clicking, selecting your text. It doesn't pick that up either. So you have to, it's kind of a game that you have to play to kind of go back and forth to see what's going to work and not work. The other thing I noticed, what I was going to do is I was going to insert one of the quick parts that we created a while back into letterhead. It didn't like that either. So it doesn't seem to like the quick parts, or even I was inserting like a header or footer. It didn't like those building block headers and footers. So it would be something that you would do maybe that you would kind of have to do from scratch, but then it would be done because you record as a macro and it would be there for you all the time. So if you do try to run the macro and it doesn't work, it could just be because whatever you're trying to do, the macro will not record. So let's just go through a couple of things here. The first thing I'm going to do is insert a header. And again, the first time I did it, I double clicked in the header here. It didn't seem to like that. I don't know if it was that or if it was the building block. So I'm going to go to header here and choose edit header. And then I'm just going to type in input letterhead. So if you have a specific, depending on how a company might work, you might have a letterhead that you print to, or maybe you could actually just put the letterhead in your Word document and you don't have to try and worry about printing it to a letterhead. You could put all the letterhead information in here, the image, the company name, all of that, put that in here. Then I could also go down and put it into the footer as well. And I just realized I haven't even started recording my macro, so I should stop here before I continue. So I'm going to close this out, and I'm going to start with, let me back up here for a second. Make sure you have your developer tab. If you don't have a developer tab showing, you'll want to go to the File menu and go down to Options. And under Customize Ribbon over here on the left, you're going to make sure that developer is checked here on the right. And then you'll click OK. And then your developer tab should be showing. So you need this in order to be able to do the macros. So let me go back in here and take out this letterhead that I inserted. And I just opened up the macro text document to begin with here. So you have it available to you. It has you working on that throughout the chapter as well. So let's go ahead and begin with starting to record our macro. I'm going to go to the developer button, choose record macro, and I'm just going to call this header. And notice you can put a keyboard command to it or a button, but for now I'm just going to choose this header. And notice that I also have, you can store in all documents, which it means that no matter what document you open, it'll be available, or you can store it in a specific document. I'm actually going to choose to keep it in all documents right now, but I wanted to mention this to you because when you do your homework for me, and I mentioned it in Blackboard, make sure you're saving these macros to the document you're working in, like this macro text document, because if you don't, save it to that, I won't be able to see your macros when I open it in Blackboard because it would have saved it to your templates in Word and I wouldn't be able to see it. So just make sure that you follow the directions I have in Blackboard for some of that there. Okay, so I'm going to click OK here. And then I'm going to go about, notice that I have some options up here now, stop recording, pause recording. Notice this little stop button down here too. I know the macro is recording because those of you who are old enough to know can see that the little cassette tape is attached to the little arrow there. So almost looks like a frowny face, but I think it's supposed to be what we would consider an old cassette tape that we used to use. Who knows? Anyway, so I'm going to go back to inserting my header here. Go to edit header and again type in input letterhead as if you were going to do that. Then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to put in a page number as well. So like I mentioned before, I was not very successful with some of these building blocks. Word acted really weird when I tried to apply that actual macro. So I'm just going to use inserting a page number here, page number 2. And I'm going to close the header and footer. And I'm going to stop that macro. So the one thing I wanted to mention to you, when you are recording macros, the first thing I would do is run through the steps yourself for the first time. It doesn't matter how slow you go. So I could have typed in this input letterhead. I could have talked to you for a few minutes, which I kind of did. And then I came down here and put in the footer. It doesn't record the time. It records every time you click a button or the key, do anything on the keyboard. That's what it's recording. So just know what you're doing so you don't have to undo things and then try and redo them, and because it's going to record every step you take. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to open up a new file here. And I'm going to go ahead and run that macro. So I can do this a couple different ways. Under my view menu, there's a macros button here. And of course I can go back to my developer tab and go to macros. Either one will take me back. So if I don't assign a keyboard command or a button on my quick access toolbar, this is how I have to come in and find it. Go to my macros, click on it, and then choose run. And you'll see there's my input letterhead that I put in there, and there's my page number that I put down here. So, and it put that in the header and the footer. So you could see how if I would insert this information into a header and footer, all I would have to do is run that macro and boom, there's my letterhead, whatever I'd put in there for my letterhead. Okay, I'm going to go back to the other document again and record formatting some things. So let's go back to the developer tab, record macro. This one I'm going to call formatting. And I'm going to add a keyboard command to this one. I'm going to add Control-Alt-A, I think is one of them they used in the book. So press, here it is, and then I have to hit assign. If I don't hit assign, it doesn't actually assign that keyboard command. So I'm going to hit close now. And I'm going to click in front of this paragraph here. And this is one thing that's important to note. The macro doesn't record, like if I would choose to select this by triple clicking here, the macro doesn't record that. So I need to click in front of the paragraph, hit Shift Control down arrow. That selects my whole paragraph for me. Then I can go to the Home tab. And whenever I'm creating a macro, I always want to be safe in that I'm going to go into menus sometimes to make things work. Like I'm going to make this bold and I'm going to make it red. And okay, I'll leave it at that. And then I'm also going to apply a border, which is going to look weird, but we'll go ahead and do it anyway. So that's what I'm going to do for this macro, this formatting macro. I have that done, so I'm going to hit stop. Again, I can go to the developer tab, choose stop, or I can hit stop down here. So we'll go ahead and do that. Okay, so now I'm going to just undo what I did here when I recorded that macro, so now we can run it. So if I click by this paragraph here and go to macros, formatting is chosen, I can choose run, and there it just applied that formatting I did. I could also come to this paragraph and I could do Shift Control or Control-Alt-A, and it runs it as well. Although for some reason that did not include my, it didn't include my underlining there. Let's try that again. Oh, I'm not sure why it's not including that letter or this line, but a good example of sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So the whole point of me going through this again for you, a couple things with macros. You might find that you have no reason to use something like this, and that's fine. You might not. But the one good thing to think about, or one thing to think about, let's think about a signature in a letter. You could, type sincerely. Those of you who I have in e-communications right now might find this helpful. And then you could put in your spaces, type in the writer's name and your initials. And that would be something you could record. And then when you get to the end of the letter, boom. But again, that would be if you were, again, something that you're doing on a regular basis all the time would be a macro that you would record. The other thing I do just want to mention is if you do have a problem with one of your macros, you can choose to edit. So if I click on the formatting button here, I could choose to edit it. And I just want you to know it's going to open up in Visual Basic here. But unless you have the sort of background that would where this makes sense to you, this might not be helpful. So most of the time, if I have to do something with my macro because it's not working, I go into macros and I click on it and I hit delete and I try again, because that's easier than trying to figure out the Visual Basic for me and fix it than just to do it over. So I will warn you that it's not always going to be perfect and work for you. So practice a little bit. Don't get frustrated. Use what I just showed you. You can also work through the book. Like I said, I'll include that link that I showed you there from the website a little bit. That can be some interesting, helpful information. But just like almost everything we've done in MBA 1 so far, you're going to find that we're covering things that may or may not be useful to you in your business setting. There's a lot of different things we're going to cover this semester that may or may not be useful. So document formatting, we did a lot of letters, memos, things you do on a regular basis, important formatting, things that are important to know. This semester is more of all these kind of additional things that you may or may not use. So every time we cover something, you might say, not sure if this would be helpful to me where I work or where I will work, but it's good to know that it's possible to use, so that if something ever does come up or you have a job later on that it could be helpful, then you just kind of know in the back of your head, I remember something like this and maybe I could use this in the future. Okay, so that's macros for you. Hopefully you find this helpful. If you run into troubles with macros, again, let me know. Again, it's going to be a little bit of a trial and error sort of process. So it's not always going to work for you. So don't get frustrated. Delete, try again, delete, try again. I think it'll be okay in the end. So hope everyone's doing well at home while you're staying at home, safer at home, so that we can hopefully get back to normal over the next few weeks. Let me know if you need anything. Take care.